Essentially, he was threatening anyone who exercises their freedom of speech. Should that be in itself be considered a crime as well?
I think there should be a limit on the government's right to interfere with free speech. Whether you can actually throw the book at somebody because the specific reason they chose to attack somebody was trying to suppress their free speech, I'm not so sure about that, because I do have a problem with changing the consequences attached to a crime based on the motive. I think a stabbing is a stabbing, a shooting is a shooting, a bombing is a bombing. Motive to me seems irrelevant as long as you can establish that somebody intended and in fact did commit the crime. What we don't want to have is a situation in which, for example, I think here in Victoria, it's a greater offence under the law to attack somebody who's an emergency frontline worker. Now, nobody condones attacking an ambulance driver or a policeman or anything like that. But I don't think that attacking somebody who happens to have a certain job should carry a greater criminal penalty than attacking somebody who happens to be an accountant or a lawyer or an entertainer or something like that.
Yes,
I think
well
that
said.
we need to be consistent across the board. If the sentences or the rate of conviction or anything else are manifestly inadequate after a policeman is attacked or stabbed or whatever, well, that's a separate conversation. You tackle that at a legal reform level. But I don't like the idea of creating separate offences based on who is attacked, what the motive is, or any other thing that's irrelevant to the fact that a human being was attacked, hurt, even killed in some cases. That is the thing we need to avoid, the harm to other people.
Exactly. Well said, Gideon. Now, let's turn to federal politics. Scott Morrison seems to have made himself health minister during the pandemic. I thought that role was held by Greg Hunt. Gideon, have you made any sense of any of this?
Gee, who was a worse health minister, Scott Morrison or Greg Hunt? That you could flip a coin on that. I was dead against this idea until you phrased it that way. Maybe there was something in it. No, look, in all seriousness, this is the most bizarre thing I think I've ever seen in politics. And I've been following Australian politics since I was like 15, since I was first handing out how to vote cards in short pants. This is absolutely, and I shouldn't be making light of it, because this is something akin to a constitutional crisis. The fact that you had the Governor-General appointing the Prime Minister to portfolios, not just without the knowledge of the general public, not just without the knowledge of the Parliament, not just without the knowledge of the federal government party room, but without the knowledge of the colleagues themselves who vacated from their post with the stroke of a pen in the middle of the night without their knowledge. I don't even know how this worked. So what, you had Greg Hunt signing ministerial declarations, and at the same time you had Scott Morrison, doing the real ones just to make sure they had the force of law. It is undemocratic. It is contradictory, I think, to the Westminster system. It's the Governor-General claims it was constitutional, it was fine because that's on the advice of the government of the day. Even so, even if that is correct, the fact that alarm bells didn't ring when David Hurley was appointing Scott Morrison as the Minister for Everything, the fact that didn't raise alarm bells shows that his tenure, I think, has to be reviewed, and reviewed urgently, because the fact that, did he at least seek the advice of the High Court in this situation? Did he at least confer with Her Majesty? His discharge of responsibilities also needs to be looked at. But look, this just fits into a pattern of an era in which the rule of law was ignored by governments across Australia, but including the federal government in particular. And it adds to a huge rap sheet that Scott Morrison was left with after the coronavirus issue. Now, appointing yourself as minister without the knowledge of the Parliament, whatever, that's one thing. That's bad and terribly egregious on rule of law backgrounds, but it doesn't hurt anybody. But preventing Australian citizens from coming into their own country, standing by while families are separated at the border, things like that, it shows that Scott Morrison did not cover himself in glory during that era.